Meeting of the Rules Administration Procedure Committee to order. The date is June 20th. The time is 3 o'clock. With us today, we have Alderman Larson, Alderman Barrero, Alderman Bug, and myself, Alderman Franco. First item on the agenda is 25-0394, approval of the minutes from Rules Administration and Procedure Committee meeting held on May 6, 2025. We have a motion.
So moved.
A motion by Alderman Barrero,
Second.
second by Alderman Bug. All in favor, say aye.
Aye.
Opposed? Passes 4-0. Clerk, do we have anybody from the public wishing to speak?
No one has signed up.
Okay. Then we will go to agenda item 25-0404, an informational discussion on the upcoming ordinance amending Chapter 12 of the Aurora Code of Ordinances titled Buildings and Building Regulations to adopt the 2024 I-Series of codes and recommended amendments.
Hello, Alderman. Name's Josh Ream. I'm Director of Development Services for the City of Aurora. With me here today, too, from my right to left here, I have Cody Lake, one of our combination inspectors, who's been pivotal in undertaking this, our Chief Development Service Officer, John Curley, and then Director of Building and Permits, Jesse Kohler in the back, sorry. Alderman Larson, just so you know, since this is like our third presentation on it, if you didn't watch them, we left off last time part of the way through the building code, and then we're going to be continuing through some other ones. If you want to sit down at some point in time or go over where we were at or the process, I'd be happy to do that with you. Feel free to reach out and we can work something out, because I know everybody else was around for the rest of it, but that can get you caught up at some point in time if you'd like. All right?
Yeah, thank you.
You're welcome. So kind of going through here, again, we're going to finish out where we were at with the building code. We got through the significant changes last time, so I'm going to cover some of the ordinance items that would be reflected in the International Building Code process here. Just for a quick overview, Alderman Larson, just so you know, the building code portion is just on commercial properties. 1 and 2 family dwellings, including townhomes, are excluded. No mechanical, electrical, or plumbing, sprinkler systems or anything like that in there. And then we always try and emphasize that this is like a base minimum level that the code sets. It's not like some extravagant thing. This is the minimum requirements for kind of life safety is what we're establishing with these. For the ordinance updates, and we're going to try and do this with all of the following subsequent ones we have to review as well, is we're only going to highlight the areas of the ordinance that had changes to them. So if they relocated by number or anything like that, we're not really including them just for brevity's sake and to eliminate confusion. Anything we're adding as part of the ordinance, we've kind of tried to highlight in green. Anything that are deletions are going to be in red. Anything that's in the same place but maybe got some modifications in blue, and then tried to add some significant notes in orange, just so you guys have all that stuff. And again, the PDF document we sent in has kind of the full breakdown of everything. This is just more of a synopsis of the significant portions of it for you all. So here in the building code, one of the first things that we're highlighting in blue is just kind of a clarification of the building code official and the role, kind of making this technically Jesse's position is the chief building official, but then John and I, as being part of development services, could also serve in that role if he's gone. Before, this just wasn't clear, so it's basically just a clarification in the code. The next section, that 105.2 there, it's a whole bunch of things that we don't presently permit. So, I mean, you're going to see on there painting, papering, water tanks, some other things like that that are listed. There's no change there. The reason it's included is for the second area. And number 7, prefabricated swimming pools of a certain height that are installed entirely above ground. What we've been having problems with these, and several aldermen have called us, is that when they're not being permitted, we're getting them set in side yards, over by sidewalks and things like that. So we're thinking even the ones with like pole setups and everything like that. So we're changing the ordinance so that they're going to have to come in for permits unless they're the real small, like inflatable or just plastic shell ones, basically because we're having too many people set them up across property lines in areas they're not allowed and stuff like that. And the quantity of complaints we were getting and having to deal with after the fact, and that you guys were probably getting, was just kind of a lot. So we're just trying to clean that up so that we have something in the ordinance that we can actually point to that requires them to move these out of the way, just because they're becoming a conflict between neighbors and property owners and stuff like that. In this same section as well, number 12 used to be temporary ramps at single-family homes. Putting that in this section of the IBC was causing these ramps a lot of times to meet certain commercial standards and accessibility elements. So we're wanting to remove it and strike it from here, and we're putting it all in the residential section so it can meet more of those requirements and have less stringent needs on them that a homeowner who's going to use this for a temporary amount of time doesn't really need. So just trying to make that a little easier on someone who's already going through something anyways. Additional items in the IBC, we talked about these as part of the adoption, but we're codifying some definition for bedrooms, both their sizes and what kind of needs to be in there. That's because frequently either in basements of certain homes or buildings, and then also in multi-unit apartment buildings and stuff like that, getting that definition down is really important so we can define what needs to meet certain criteria versus other elements. The biggest thing probably in all of the IBC adoption is this 903.1.2 that covers sprinkler systems. Presently, our threshold for requiring a sprinkler system in a new construction building is 12,000 square feet. We are proposing moving it down to 5,000 square feet. This is after a lot of research of other municipalities throughout the state, and then also looking at the IBC and IFC a little bit more. Part of the reason for this is we are an outlier right now. Our present standard is 12,000 square feet, which is a fairly significantly sized building. And so in talking with AFD and some of their responses, they're looking to get this lowered down to this threshold. There's an increased problem with fires, not only burning hotter but faster due to the amount of plastics and other certain materials that we have in the building, just a much quicker combustion time and then increased flammability, causing it to spread faster. So the use of increased amount of sprinkler systems should help to increase the safety not only for occupants and the AFD, but also the building itself. You want anything on this, John?
I just wanted to highlight the fact that this will not apply to existing buildings. This will apply to new buildings only. The way we adopt the existing building code, which hopefully we'll get to today, if not today, next time we talk, is the existing building code adoption that we're proposing would push you back to the tabular areas in the published code and not our local amendment reductions. So this would not apply to existing buildings in that way then.
Question, so what type of modification does a existing building do to make sure, now do you have to comply with it? Is there like, if I do the X amount of remodeling, now I have to comply because I made a significant change in my existing buildings? Is there like a metric for that?
Yeah, actually, we'll talk about it a little bit more in the
Okay.
existing building code, and I'm sure I could
Okay.
bore everyone.
No,
but
that's fine, if we're gonna talk about it.
We've built a national reputation, actually. We've made presentations and built a national reputation on how we handle existing building code application. And the answer is it depends, and it's a individual solution for every building. So if a building's particularly small, of a great construction type, has very good fire compartmentation, is short versus the construction type that it is too, you get bonus points for those, and it's literally a mathematical formula. It's a little complex, but
Okay.
it does boil down to a math. But it's the great thing about it, in my mind, despite it being cumbersome, is it's a solution for that particular building.
Right.
So you're giving the building credit for everything that's great that's great about it, and acknowledging its deficiencies when it has deficiencies as well.
Okay.
And it allows all of us, the building officials, the design professionals, to craft the best solution for that particular building, and essentially keep the vitality of the building in place, or the viability of the building in place, and still make sure it's safe.
Okay.
So I'm sorry I interrupted, Josh.
You're good. Always helpful.
Yeah,
Any other
question.
questions on that for right
Yeah.
now? Alderman Wood?
So you said right now we're existing at 12,000. We're going down to 5. And of course, these codes were talked about extensively throughout the state. What is the state, I guess it's a recommendation now. We're going to 5, so that's probably, at the best practices end. But what is the minimum right now?
There's no one set for the overall state because we
Okay.
don't have an overarching code for the state. What we found, Jim French, our fire inspector, who's associated with a lot of the state training, everything, pulled a report for us. We actually found a vast majority of communities are at a 0. Any new building requires sprinkler systems. So they have no threshold before you have to do it. If you guys would like, I can get that report and send it off so you guys can see all the different municipalities and their square footages.
Sorry, I like to add a little distinction to that too. So the base building code itself makes determinations on sprinkler threshold, not as this simplistic, if you're over X square feet. It actually is a cross table that considers the construction type of the building and the use of the building. And it has variable thresholds for initial sprinklering requirements based on those. So as an example, if you're a hazardous use, you're sprinklering. It's already at 0.
Right.
This would reduce to 5,000 everything that was in excess of that from that tabular analysis on the front end.
Okay.
Sorry.
Excellent. Thank you. I appreciate the detail.
Yeah, and if you guys do want that study, because a lot of other municipalities are doing similar to what we do, where they're giving it kind of a caveat amount, just let us know, email or put in a request through Rich, and we'll get you guys the report that kind of lists off all the communities, and we kind of compared by our size and everything like that to the other ones when we were looking this over. Going down further on this, 90711 that I put in there is just kind of one for a requirement of a NICET Level 2 stamp on drawings for alarm systems. It was kind of clear practice, but it was buried down in code text where it made it hard to reference or enforce. So we're just trying to bring that forward to make it a little easier for our review staff to provide that as part of the project. So the next one is the scope, the plumbing code. As all of you know, the state has its own plumbing code, so we've always kind of adopted section by need. What we decided to do, rather than caveating individual areas and everything, is strike a majority of it and just basically say now where the Illinois plumbing code is silent, the city of Aurora is going to enforce the international plumbing code. And a lot of this is on storm drain, roof things, some stuff with toilet partitions. It's minimal stuff, but this just makes it easier and cleaner to read than what we were doing before. Again, the reference standards below for NFPA and everything like that. We're moving everything to a general section. We talked about that before, where all of this unique code language at the front of each book was just being repetitive, and we thought there was a higher chance of missing it, errors, things like that. So putting it all in the general section of the ordinance is just going to provide a lot of simplicity in reading and enforcing. Any questions about the ordinance updates? That's really all we had on the IBC, and if we're good, I'll move on to other sections.
Questions or comments from the committee?
I just
Yeah.
had a question on the 5,000 square feet.
Mhm.
Is that going to cover a lot of these restaurants that are like fast food? They seem to be a little smallish on the small side. Are they 5,000 square feet or more?
A lot of them are teetering right on that threshold. A lot of them constantly try and drive under. And this is part of what John was talking about in the code, that there's an assembly use, and some of them drive that down even more. You got additional on it? Yeah.
Jesse's checking, but I believe restaurants are already at 5,000 square feet or 100 people. So you could be a 4,500 square foot restaurant with 100 people and you still cross the threshold. So this 5,000, what it's doing is it's that table that I was talking about where you analyze the use and the hazard by use and construction type. It's only deflating everything above 5,000 down to 5,000. And I believe, am I right, Jesse?
Yeah,
So assembly uses restaurants would already be at 5,000. So it would literally be no change for restaurants whatsoever.
Any more, or are we good? Okay. This was a previous slide, but just kind of for next steps, we're going to continue to refine based on anything we find here. But just so you know, upcoming things today, we're going to talk about the existing building code and the fire code as far as we can get and keep everybody awake. We'll later on present on the residential code and then the mechanical, fuel, gas, plumbing, and other ones. Once we get it all done with you guys, we're going to do an informational of everything to BZE and then presentations to both COW and council for full approval. So we'll keep going back and forth on this for a little while here. Next one, this is going to be a combination of both the existing building code and the fire code. The reason these are kind of thrown together after the building code, there's a lot of similar references. If you actually went through and looked at the existing building code and fire code, a lot of the sections we already discussed in the building code are also modified here. There's just some repetitive language and sections that's for continuity across, and also because certain municipalities may only adopt the fire code or they may only adopt the building code, but the International Code Council is just trying to keep that, again, cohesive from book to book, so there's a little continuity there. So just a quick overview, the IEBC is intended for use with buildings that are already constructed, nothing new. So if you're doing an addition, it's a separate item, but anything that affects the existing would come out of this code. But any like commercial remodels, major redevelopments of buildings, all would start or should start out of here. And again, it's strictly, again, a core commercial book. So no 1 or 2 family dwellings, townhomes. And what a lot of the existing building code book is doing is providing modifications to the other code books. So you can get in this section, it's going to tell you to do certain stuff, and then going to reference you out to the building code, mechanical code, or something else for the rest of the work. It's just providing, again, some governing measures before you would do anything there. The IFC is a little bit different. It covers both commercial and residential properties, depending on what you're doing. It's probably a primary commercially focused book, but there are some residential aspects in it. It also covers operational permits. So if you think of like large storage tanks for gas, propane, things like that on site, tents, fire pits, and other smaller items that aren't distinctive to the main building code. While sprinkler and alarms requirements come out of here, the actual specifications for how they're installed happen in some NFPA standards that get referenced out of here. So though we'll give some more generic sprinkler and alarm requirements like the square footage stuff we've been talking about, the actual installations handled elsewhere. And then we also cover the storage of any type of hazardous materials in the fire code.
Small notice here, if you go back one slide, is it, the top part says overview of the International Existing Building Code, IBC, should that be IEBC?
Yes, it should be.
Okay, I'm just
Thank you.
looking, it didn't
Yes,
match the
you
one
are
below. I'm
100%
like,
correct.
Where am I at with this? What am I missing? So I just want to make sure.
I'll
Okay,
talk
that's
to my
fine.
proofreaders.
That's fine, thank you.
Who are all standing behind me? Again, just so everyone knows, I think Alderman Larson, so you know, that went over this, there's management staff for development services all reviewed all of these books along with city staff that's listed there. I did omit Jim French accidentally. He's our fire inspector, so I got to add him back on there. Then our committee of both contractors, architects, and engineers that all cover everything with us, and then the Thompson Elevator Company, who is our outside consultant on engineering elevator items. So the breakdown of this, what we're going to kind of do first is go over the significant changes again. One column is going to have where we're going to be at in the 2024 should we adopt this, and the other column is going to have anything that changed across the previous code. So it'll be this is where we're at and kind of where we're going. So there's side by side on each of them. And then afterwards, we'll again go through the ordinance modifications so you can see anything that would change on our base ordinance again. I already kind of covered this as well the second time. So that's, again, the significant changes kind of set up there. The first thing, the IEBC, that we wanted to discuss was the technical assistance portion. What this section is doing, it's probably nothing major for anyone here, but more for us, is that it's allowing us to kind of force a developer or a design professional to get an outside technical opinion. Before, there was nothing explicit in the code about this. We could certainly ask for it. There's obscure references in areas, but by putting it all the way forward in the 100 section, what this modification of the code is basically doing is giving us almost an immediate ability to go out and tell someone, hey, you say that this element can structurally bear this. We want you to get a structural engineer to analyze that and show us that's actually right. And we can say, it's right here, it's on you. They don't get to argue or go back and forth. If we want to ask about anchoring to terracotta that's been put on a wall or something like that, and whether it can support a new awning, we have the ability to have them go to a terracotta expert and figure out that. So it's just giving us a little more strength to make sure that what someone is telling us is actually backed up by somebody with very specific knowledge on that matter, that they are really good at it, have much more professional knowledge than any of us or anyone that's else working on the project would have. Again, this was just a vague thing before, so we got a little more teeth in here. Next on the existing building code is this definition of change of occupancy. We discussed this a little bit with the IBC, but what this is going to give is a little more rigidity to what is a change of occupancy and when people need to go through and get a new certificate of occupancy at their establishment when they're changing over. So before, it was allowing anyone in the same use group. So if you were a business classification, it didn't matter where you were on the spectrum of a business classification in the code, you could go out there without having to update your certificate of occupancy. Now what we're saying is even if you're a business occupancy, if you're a higher hazard than the previous use, if you're going to have more people in it, different types of materials, things like that, you need to come in, have us check and make sure that that building is still going to be safe for that use. This is going to help us catch, I think a good example of this would be a lot of automotive uses that you guys have seen where it's easy to skip from like one type of automotive use was in there. Maybe they were just doing brakes or maybe just oil changes. Now all of a sudden they're doing tire changes and things like that. Same use group, same area, but now all of a sudden we're stacking tires inside of a building and things like that. Again, very flammable, very hard to put out, very dangerous for occupants. When you start stacking those, they could fall, things like that. So this is just trying to give us a little more ability to make sure that everything's going to be safe through transitions from one business to another. It also helps us track what's going on in buildings more, so we can verify that owners or tenants aren't doing illegal changes that may endanger people that are either working or patronizing whatever that new establishment is our objective here.
Question.
Yeah.
So when we do that, somebody's going to change some of their business, which would call for that. Are we going to have the manpower to say, I want to change this in 1 month? Are you guys going to be able to get out here within a month to make sure that I don't have to wait because I'm waiting for you guys to inspect this so I can make my change? You know, that type of thing, a timing thing, pretty much.
Yeah, from both just for edification, what most of these would still fall under is our, we call it a COCO permit. It's a commercial certificate of occupancy, basically saying I'm in the same use group. I want to get in here. They don't have to get professional drawings or anything. Usually it's a little sketch plan. Here's what I'm going to do. And then we look at it. Yeah, it matches up roughly with the last occupancy. Let's approve it. We'll get an inspector out there. Usually that review time frame is under 5 business days. I don't think we're going to see enough of these where that would get hampered at all. Okay. And then just about any of our combination building or fire inspectors can handle this inspection. It's usually only one inspector going out checking these items. In the example I provided, like the automotive, you're probably going to see a plumbing inspector and mechanical also go out. But again, I don't see a reason at this point in time where we wouldn't able to handle any of the additional volume that would be created.
Yeah, so we don't anticipate a delay from us necessarily based on time. We should be able to get out there in a timely manner to make sure everything goes as they would like.
Yes.
Okay.
And I would say also by doing this, hopefully as it rolls for a while and in the future, as we're in the buildings more frequently checking them, there's less chance of those problems where we've got like a gap tenant or two over 5 or 6 years and someone's done something and now this guy, the second or third one down the road, is all of a sudden delayed 6 months while we go backwards and figure out everything that changed and making sure we're brought back up to standards again,
Okay.
if that makes sense.
Yeah, okay.
Any other questions on that?
Any other questions? Okay, go ahead.
Next one, we're actually jumping, I believe, Now there really wasn't much in the existing building code. It's been a fairly stable code the last couple of adoptions, which means it's in pretty good shape. For the IFC, the first section we kind of want to go over is artificial decorative vegetation. So I'm sure everybody's seen this. It's the big, they're going to put a green mat on the wall, or we're doing artificial flowers all over the place. Great, they look nice, highly flammable, not really covered by any production standards that we would note. And when they're usually used, they're by light sources, things like that, areas like sitting next to a table with a candle on it, stuff like that. What this is providing with us is now we're going to finally have some production standards, some location standards, size this vegetation can be, how much of it can be on a wall, how much it has to be separated by, just again, so that if this stuff starts on fire, we limit it as much as possible, and hopefully it doesn't cause a conflagration from, place to place. This is mostly going to probably affect small business areas, restaurants that kind of decorate with it. But again, we're trying to protect their merchandise, their restaurant, whatever is going on. So any particular questions? I'm pretty sure everyone's familiar with these products. Go. Next one, manual actuation device. So what this is, if anyone's been in a commercial cooking kitchen or anything like that next to the hood, somewhere within 10 to 20 feet, we always have like what we call like a mushroom or a pole that's gonna, drop all of the hood fire suppressant and start the alarm system in the area. Again, this is to get patrons out, to help the cooking staff, and to kill off the fire. What has been happening in code, it's been a strict 10 to 20 feet from the hood is where this device has to be. Obviously, that's to get it far enough away so it's not directly by the hood, and also still in close enough proximity where it's easy to hit. What we found, and we found this not only locally, but it's been a national thing, is locating that can be very tough at times. Everyone's been in a kitchen before. There's a lot going on, a lot of stuff on the wall. It's really easy to push like a cart of dishes up against one of these things, or have someone relocates a drying sink or something like that, and it's hard to make sure that we still have access. And also frequently we find that they're not actually on the path of egress. So fire starts, we want to get people moving out of the building, but the mushrooms over there we got to hit. It's code compliant there, but now we're going back and forth past the area of danger. So what they've allowed is some increased flexibility in the code, where it doesn't necessarily have to be within that 10 to 20 foot range, but if we're going to do it, it has to be on our way out. So if we're going to go out of the cooking area and stuff like that, and the thing's 24 feet away, but it's right on the wall as we go out, that's where we want it located again, because it helps move everybody along, get them out of there, and also still activate the safety measure. So again, this is just a little more flexibility in the code, something that'll be good for restaurants and also the installers of hood and the alarm systems, because they're going to have some increased flexibility. This does frequently cause consternation out in the field because of the location and everything like that. Any particular questions there? All right, good?
Nope.
Okay. Next one is existing lithium-ion energy storage systems. We covered some of this under the building code with new types of sprinkler systems that are going to have to be used with lithium-ion. This code section is a little unique in the fact that it gives us backwards enforceability. Usually the code shies away from this, but because of how quick lithium-ion technology spun out, a lot of standards that were employed 2018 and before to these areas, we have found out are not particularly good in actually containing fires from lithium-ion and providing fire departments with the ability to take care of everything. So what this does, and what this is going to do is allow the fire department, as they go on their annual inspections and see these things, is to go back and retroactively reinforce the storage, location, and plans that companies that are storing large amounts of lithium-ion batteries would have to do. There's a whole, I didn't bore you, but there's everything from plans to reports to layout quantities and stuff like that. A lot of places may already be meeting these, but it's going to be up to them to prove to the fire department that they do that. As mentioned in some of the notes there, There was a really bad, what happens with these is thermal runaway with lithium ion, and as you try and put too much water on it, it just spreads it more, and an explosion occurred that killed several firefighters. And it's a very real and very high threat for them. So again, having this in there so at least we have the ability, if we see a location in town that has a heavy amount of storage, we can get them to modify it. I couldn't right now tell you the quantity of these that we have in town. We could probably check with AFD as well. I don't think this is some huge proliferation of these where we're going to have to go and, take tons of businesses and evaluate them. But it is something that at least gives the AFD on their annual inspections the ability to look at these places.
Josh, can you touch on, this is right out of the national standard too?
Yeah, this is directly out of the national standard. This is nothing we're looking to specifically modify. It is just straight code on this.
Good.
Good. All right. Next one is for smoke and ventilation with solar photovoltaics. So what we've had with these, especially since we're still back on the 2015 code, there's a lot of confusing and conflicting language about how to vent and provide proper access around a roof with solar panels. So what this is looking to do is refine that language, because we are having, as I put in there, both overlapping and repetitive elements. So we're doing more pathways than were probably needed, and in more locations than is probably needed to provide access. So they've basically analyzed this over the last couple of code cycles and come up with a better way to provide pathing on these large roofs. So you think like if they did one on the Amazon factory out by, I think it's on Duke Parkway, and you wanted to do it there, this would allow them to more densely or in greater quantity cover the roof with solar panels than our present code adoption. And that's just, again, because of these pathways and routes around the roof and then the access points. So this one's a big clarification element. We have been having solar providers that come into us looking to go forward on code anyways because of items like this. So again, having it in there is going to help us be more flexible in what we're looking at with these large installations. Does that make all good? Flue space. This one's kind of boring, but everyone's had it. So if you think large storage warehouse, akin to like, or even your Home Depot or something like that, where we've got that racking set up really high, the flue space, so in between the back-to-back and the storage of the aisles, and also in between the pallets, there's supposed to be an amount of flue space to allow the heat or anything from a fire to get up as quickly as possible, and we want to trigger those alarms and sprinklers up in the ceiling as quick as we can so that either we start dumping water on it and or we alert all the patrons, employees, and everything to what's going on. There used to be a conflict about whether or not the actual physical members of the racking system, so the metal tubing and other elements, created a restriction to that flow and everything like that. Basically, they've gone through and looked at enough of the ways that these are set up, these racking systems, and determined that those elements should not be counted against the open space. So basically, if my pallet's here and my pallet's here, and I have a structural member in between for the racking system, that doesn't mean that my opening is any less. So they're basically saying you're only measuring from storage element to storage element, and those flue spaces are clear even if they have structure in it. Again, it's more a code clarity thing, but does allow us with a little more flexibility when we're on site doing inspections.
Good.
Just some other things to note real quick with the IEBC. They did add some area on storm shelters there. They added carbon monoxide like we talked about with the IBC adoption for areas that have carbon monoxide producing equipment. There's a replacement for windows and emergency escape openings. What that's basically doing is if, as long as the window you're replacing, the one you're replacing it with, has at least the same opening or better, it's fine. Before we were saying if it was like a double hung or something and we're replacing the window, you have to do maybe a casement window or something like that so that you get more opening. basically it's saying, no, if it was good at the time now, we want you to be able to replace it with like. And then there's some stuff covering bars, grills, screen covers. The IFC also added a couple of sections. One of them in interest is 320, additive manufacturing. So think 3D printing and stuff like that. It's just got some base requirements for them, nothing out of the ordinary there. An interesting maintenance one on rolling fire doors, where they're now going to require annual certification. The sprinklers in A group occupancies is interesting. Before it read that it was a level from grade, and now it's the level of discharge. So we're trying to say that if you're off the discharge level, we need to get you that building sprinklered. Marking of buildings for photovoltaic systems. Again, this is to give more information to fire. It's going to be placarding and stickering some stuff. Size of spray booths, usually spray booths for like cars, painting, stuff like that, were restricted in size. Now they're going to more percentage of square foot. So basically, the bigger the building you are, the more space you have, the bigger your spray booth could kind of be. And then they also did an interesting section on inflatable amusement devices. So think like bounce houses, things like that. So that they don't spontaneously combust, get too hot, get on fire, and how they have to operate and everything. So that would go under more of our operational permits area. Other than that, any questions about the significant changes for these?
Questions or comments from the committee?
We're good? Maybe I can bore you for like 10 more minutes?
Yeah, maybe 10, because we got to start at 4.
Yeah, for Kyle?
Yeah.
So going into ordinance updates for both of these books real quick. Again, same pattern, everything like that, trying to keep it consistent. So the International Building Code. So one of the first things up there, and this is this is the one I was thinking of, right? Yeah, so the preliminary existing code meeting. What we're putting into the code is that on anyone doing an existing building, we're going to offer a meeting to sit down with the owner, their development team, and anybody else that wants to be involved from our side, so maybe planning and zoning, could be the fire official, and go over with them an existing building study review to basically give them a analysis of where you're at. Do you meet the code? As John brought over earlier, there's the existing building code study to see, do you meet enough qualifications where do you need to put in a sprinkler system, or can you just do alarms, like all this stuff. And we're going to sit with them and then give them all this information out so that they can go back and begin their design and everything like that. So again, this is going to be a free, regular service we want to provide to everybody, and we're just trying to kind of codify it here so that everyone knows it's something they can come in and get at any point in time.
I just wanted to highlight, we do this now, but we have run into instances where a local business owner will bring an architect who's not interested in performing this kind of a study and just wants to use the base building code. And we're standing there thinking to ourselves, well, we probably could have made this project more viable had we been involved earlier. So this is merely codifying something we currently do to encourage an opportunity to make the project simpler for the business owner. And we also, you've also been kind enough to allow us training funding for architects for existing building codes before. One of the reasons we felt we needed to do that, and still think we should continue doing that, is it gives us a list of design professionals who are interested in learning how to use that tool to make development, existing development, or redevelopment easier for our constituents.
The next thing on your highlighting green, that bedroom definition, it's the same thing we had coming out of the IBC and IFC, again, just highlighting it for use. The language on number 4 there is just to clean up for historic districts in Aurora and how we would recognize what's there. The two ones that are interesting there, the technical and feasibility and tolerances, we're trying to better define what is again, technically infeasible, so that we can help out when people are modifying existing buildings. So if there's structural issues or other elements that they just can't work around, that we're given more flexibility to do something outside of the code norm to provide them a pathway to compliance. And then the tolerances is again saying that we can deviate from certain dimensional norms. So say in a bathroom, and this is really boring, a toilet's supposed to be so many inches off the wall to its center. If we've got a conflicting element or some weird design where they can't achieve it because they're gonna have to change where the sanitary line goes into structure, we can basically say, hey, we're good with you being a ½ inch off on this. That's totally fine. There's no set range or element in here because so many things vary, like the range of what something would be that's acceptable could be a couple of feet in some instances, could be a couple of inches. So giving a tolerance to a specific number is very hard because it kind of depends on the individual element. But again, we're just trying to give our staff a little more flexibility to help with things like that. Equipment on and access to rooftops. This may be interested to people, and I imagine especially aldermen for downtown or large areas. What we're looking to do is on anything that's on downtown core or fringe, when you're putting something mechanical up there, you're technically supposed to have fall protection so that someone working can't fall off of it. What we have found is too frequently people take the easiest way out, and we're putting up like bars or in some cases fencing and things like that to provide that fall protection. While there's other exceptions in the mechanical code that allow, it's a little more expensive, but it allows restraint devices with like carabiner clips and everything like that, so to arrest fall and everything. So we're trying to push people towards that. So in downtown, we don't have those issues with the top of the buildings having bright yellow painted pipe rail or vinyl fence around and things like that. We want a more consistent look of the historic buildings. The next one is okay. The next one, 306712.1, is more specific for bathrooms. We got this. This is usually governed by the state, but she gave us some increased flexibility here. And what we're going to be able to say is on a bathroom, if you're remodeling it, you used to have to change everything in the bathroom to meet accessibility standards. So if you're going to change out the partition between the toilet and the sink, that whole bathroom had to come up to code, which could then mean you have to move walls, plumbing. It became very cost prohibitive, and a lot of people stopped doing stuff or were doing them illegally because of that process. So what we've got now is that, and what we are now going to put into code based on the interpretation, is that as long as you're not making it any less accessible, that is going to be okay, as long as the element you're installing becomes the accessible standard. So if you're moving a sink or relocating it, we want that set to the accessible standard. You can't go and put it at the higher thing it was before. It needs to move at the accessible height, but then you don't necessarily need the full clear floor space around it. So if you're only at 4'8" and we technically need 5 foot, that's okay. That's just kind of what we're looking to achieve there. I think I got like 2 more here. These areas are all set to reflect on the code studies that we do in the chapter 13. This is that book section where we do a point value breakdown of an existing building study to see whether or not the building is compliant. With each one of these sections, what we have found is that the code is basically saying, if you got credit for this wall here, you're not allowed to use it anywhere else. So if I made a corridor that was 2-hour rated to get people out, I'm not also allowed to take credit for it helping to create a compartment over here that fire can't get into it. As we've done a lot of analysis and looked at other municipalities around the country and things doing it, we didn't think this was a fair way to look at the buildings and was handcuffing them, because that wall isn't going anywhere else as part of this. So you should get points in almost both sections.
And I just wanted to add, all of these provisions that were the local amendments to the International Existing Building Code that we're making are to make our building stock more viable rather than less. And we, like I mentioned before, we've built a national reputation. We give seminars on this topic all the time. We've presented the Silver Plate building, the Hobbs building, the 30 North Broadway, several other, the 2 schools that we redeveloped on the west side to a national audience. And the Association for Preservation Technology International, which is really a national group that's expanded internationally, is presenting this local proposed adoption to modify the forthcoming IEBC code book with our amendments. So we've made an impression on their codes and standards committee to the extent that they're starting to take our lead and make suggestions. So we've talked through how this might benefit existing building stock, and they're using what we're suggesting to try and change the national standard as well.
Thanks, great.
I'll try and get through. Next thing is fire code. Again, we talked about the level of discharge before. We covered that, so I don't want to go over it again. The battery storage system's now covered in the code, so we're just removing it from here. 60310 is to do both existing and new buildings. What we found, like over in the Todd school project, is that when we're adding additional electric power and stuff like that, there's a need for a emergency shutdown because we're going to have panels in multiple places. So we're just trying to make sure that in that main electrical room or in the main fire protection room, there's a button that's going to turn off all power to the building on every panel. The thresholds we already talked about earlier. 200, nope, that one's the same. Some of this other stuff is just standpipe connections and distances. And I think that's about it, unless you guys have any more questions about the ordinance update.
Questions or comments at this point? Hearing none, thank you so much for that.
You're welcome.
And
We'll see you guys in 2 weeks again.
2 weeks, yeah, we'll be continuing this. Thank
Bring
you.
a Red
Appreciate
Bull.
all the work you guys have done on this. Thank you so much.
All right, thank you guys. Have a good one.
Next item is 25-0316. We will be holding that item for 2 weeks as the administration and ACCA talk about some of the things they need to figure out with the new appointees. With that, the held item was basically what we just talked about. But I do have a question for the mayor's office. Is there a representative from the mayor's office here?
Hello. Shannon Cameron, Mayor's Office.
So Shannon, I got a few phone calls today from constituents that said these signs that we had up for the last couple of months, Give Responsibly,
Yep.
are no longer there.
They're starting to take them down, yes.
Can you tell me why? Because I'm gonna explain. A couple weeks ago, I had a couple neighborhood meetings, and the neighbors brought up how much they really like these.
Yeah.
We don't have the guitar guys and Orchard and Galena stand in the street all the time anymore. They just think it was a good idea. So what was the thought process in taking them away? Because I think the community felt it was a pretty good idea.
Thank you, Alderman Franco. Happy to talk about that. So in talking with the unhoused community, I saw about a 75% cut in what they were receiving, and many of those people were able to afford a hotel for a night with those, were able to meet their basic needs. Some of the people that are panhandling are able to go to Hesed House and do go to Hesed House. Many are not able to go for a variety of reasons. They're not able, the organizations that are benefiting from that can't always help those people for a significant amount of reasons, right? And what we had heard from the most impacted is that these were actually causing harm. And so there was also a lot more in talking with our innovation department that was supposed to come out with the rollout of these signs. And the signs came out and very little was done on those other portions. So I think it's important that we take a step back. Housing and homelessness are going to be very important issues for this administration. And we just want to make sure that we're rolling things out, not just in really intentional ways, with including community education around these issues. We understand for our residents that there is issues with people in the roads, and it's scary, right? It's also uncomfortable for people to see people with great need in our community, but that is a fact of living in the second largest city in Illinois, that we're going to have the unhoused, and how do we treat them with dignity and work together with all of our great nonprofits and community organizations to address this need collaboratively. Innovation has started that process. And like I said, in talking with them, there were other pieces. We want to see this roll out in a thoughtful, intentional way, not just putting the signs up. So that's why we've asked Streets to do that, to back off a little bit so we can roll things out in a way that was more intentional.
Will we have a conversation with the city council about this? Because when I talk to APD, and APD is very important in this, because over the years, they have told me that the money that these people receive are not necessarily going to food and housing. So we
That's
have to make
true.
sure that we have that balance there, so it's not for drugs and alcohol, and we think it's housing because it may not be. So I think we all should be talking about this to make the best decision possible going forward to mitigate that bad portion, but provide the good portion. So
Yeah, I mean,
I'm
it
hoping
is-
we get conversation with that.
Yeah, it is absolutely true that, you know, when you hand over money, that no longer becomes your money and it's their money. And sometimes they make choices that we wouldn't necessarily condone. It could be exacerbating substance abuse issues.
Sure.
And substance abuse is a huge issue within our unhoused community because it's the way it's a survival mechanism for them to tolerate their life, which is really, really hard. It of course makes things worse, and we want to do our best to help with housing and treatment and all of that. But our facilities are at capacity too, and we have to be aware of that it's just not getting people to stop doing this isn't going to fix the issue. It might fix our comfort around it, but it won't fix the actual issue. So we want to look at those root causes, start answering the needs of those root causes, and go from there. But happy to talk about it with City Council, absolutely, and do a fuller presentation on it
Okay.
when we get there.
Okay,
Yeah,
thanks for
thank
the
you.
update. I appreciate that. Anything else to come before the RAP committee today? Hearing none, do we have a motion to adjourn? We have a motion by Alderman Bug. Second?
Second.
Second by Alderman Barrero. All in favor, say aye. Aye. Opposed? And we are adjourned at 3:51. Thank you.